So welcome everyone and ASA experts. I'm so happy to have Kayla on. I think we're gonna have so much fun chatting about what are the changes that have been happening with Landlord and Tenant Board, and like what we can do to try to stay on top of things and just make sure we're finding those right tenants and just make sure that we understand everything. Thank you so much for coming on, Kayla.
Oh, thank you for having me. I do it all the time whenever I can get in front of any landlord, one landlord, two landlords, 20 landlords. I make sure that I'm there to help you guys understand what is happening and get your involvement and teach you what I do, and make sure that we're becoming that united voice as landlords in Ontario.
Awesome. Yeah, especially like that. Like you're a landlord advocate, and I think even just knowing that we should be all advocates, we're all landlords, and we should also be trying to make sure that we're protecting ourselves too. So would you like to tell us a little bit like that? Like what do you do as a landlord advocate?
So right now, I started doing this in 2010 when the city of Cambridge made landlords responsible for their tenants' delinquent utility bills. I was at the point where I was like, I have a fiveplex, and if any of these tenants didn't pay their water bill, it was going to be put to my property taxes. So I'm like, okay, I got to figure out how to stop this. And so that's when I started getting heavily involved into how politics, especially municipal at that time, and how it actually influences the rental housing industry. So I started kind of getting my education on politics and housing on a municipal level. And within 4 years of fighting municipal government, we realized a lot of the problems were at the provincial level with respect to the Residential Tenancies Act, as well as the Landlord and Tenant Board. That's when I made a Facebook group of Ontario Landlords Watch, so that I wasn't just communicating people with one-on-one. I actually started pulling everybody into this group so that if anything was happening, such as a water billing petition or policy, I was able to inform people of what was happening so that we can fight that together. And so as throughout the years, we've had meetings with Parm Gill. He's the assistant to the Minister of Housing. We had his past assistant, so Christine Hogarth. We have meetings with her. We've had our letters going to Steve Clark, correspondence coming back. We've had many consultations now, our third consultation with the Landlord and Tenant Board, giving them the ideas of how to address their concerns with trying to deal with the backlog and running an insufficient system, really. And we also got the Ontario Ombudsman actively investigating the Landlord and Tenant Board for the delays of their hearings, as well as the orders that landlords are experiencing. And that's the one thing that people are thinking right now. Oh my God, I need my hearing, but they don't get that concept of, okay, you had your hearing. Now we have to wait for the adjudicator to now make their decision, and you won't find that out until that piece of paper comes out into the mail, and we don't know what that is. Technically, it should have been 30 days from your hearing date to get you this piece of paper. But because of these delays at the Landlord and Tenant Board, they're not able to do that. So there is a lot of changes happening at the Landlord and Tenant Board right now, with even for the recent consultation regarding the L10 application. And the L10 application is where landlords can go ahead and bring their tenants back to the Landlord and Tenant Board after they have vacated the property. But the catch is the landlords have to be the ones to serve the tenant the application and the notice of hearing and the certificate of service to the Landlord and Tenant Board. So this is the concept where it sounds great that we're able to bring our tenants back to the Landlord and Tenant Board, but now we have to be skip tracers unless you guys are underneath waiting for your tenants to leave. And then once you see that they're ready to leave, you strap yourself underneath their car so that you know exactly where their new address is. So I don't, or you need to find a skip tracer, and I don't know how they're going to do it. So there's lots of things that are happening like that, but we'll be able to we have an hour today, don't we? Or are we doing an hour? So you guys will have lots of time to ask me those questions, so I don't just ramble on things that you're not quite interested in, because I know I'm like an LTB nerd, if you call it. Wondering to know what's going on, how to do it, how to understand it, because a lot of it was in the last consultation. It was confusing, like really confusing. I think every landlord needs to pay attention to how they're describing the N13. So evicting someone for renovations, that's got to be talked about today, as well as when you're serving your tenants, they want you to serve your tenants 30 days prior to a hearing for an L10 application. But the Landlord and Tenant Board says that you have to file your certificate of service, a new certificate of service. You have to file that to the Landlord and Tenant Board 20 days before your hearing. So if you're giving me 30 days to serve the tenant, but you're telling me I have to serve the certificate of service 20 days before the hearing, the numbers are not working there. And inside of this consultation, it also said that you have to give 80 days notice to give a rent increase versus 90 days. So we're like, did this change, or do you guys not know the rules? So these are the things that we need to be doing together as a group. And I tried to get all on Facebook Live with our members to kind of pull that, but I was doing it through messaging instead. But we have a lot. We're going to be doing a Facebook Live to talk about all those details and the solutions that we put into this consultation paper. So every landlord needs to pay attention to what the Landlord and Tenant Board, just like you're here to learn how to grow your portfolio and how you want to achieve the financial freedom, we have to dedicate some time into advocacy and make sure that we are communicating with your elected officials, the Minister of Housing, especially Doug Downey, who is the Attorney General, and making sure that you're taking part in our communications into the groups that we're in. I'll stop talking now because I can go on forever. Your turn. Anybody else want to jump in?
Well, that's awesome to hear. So what would you say then? So specifically, as I think would say, like specifically with COVID, what do you think are the major impacts that we've seen and the changes from the LTB community, from LTB, like what are the changes that we're expecting to see, especially now with the second lockdown?
I like that question. I like that question because first of all, obviously we got a second. The first one was an eviction ban. Obviously the courts did it. Now this time around it doesn't look like the courts did it, so they call it an eviction pause. So we're still investigating this, how they were able to tell us we cannot enforce our evictions and deny us justice. But with the overall of what's changing for the pause is that you're still able to get your hearings. You're still able to get these orders if the backlog is still going on. You will get your orders, and you're still able to apply for the sheriff, but you won't be able to enforce it. So making sure that you're still getting that order to the sheriff, so when the eviction ban or the state of emergency is lifted, you're now ready to go and you're in that lineup. If you have a hearing that's happening because of COVID, make sure that you are working out with your payment agreement. This is something that I'm seeing through all of the different type of hearings that are happening, is that the adjudicators want to see that, how did you work with them? So what we do is that, hey, we understand you're underneath hard times. We want to work with you. We want to work out a payment agreement. Here is the payment agreement form. Please fill it out, what you're able to make. We even go a little bit extra and we're like, here, if you're in the city of Cambridge, here is Lutherwood. This Lutherwood organization is going to help you with rent arrears. It will also help you file with the portable housing benefit. So this is something where we're showing the adjudicator, we're not only trying to work out a payment plan, but we're guiding them to different places and programs that can help them not only with their rent, but with utilities. So this shows that we've been more than willing to work with them. And if they haven't paid a single dollar or a single cent, and you can voice that to the adjudicator saying, listen, I know everyone's coming underneath hard times, but if you have a rental rate of $1,000 or $1,500 and your tenant is not paying you $100 or $200 or even $50 of that, now we have a tenant that is here to abuse the system and wants to sit in front of the adjudicator to say, because of COVID, I lost hours, I had to take care of this person, I got to take care of that person. It's not fair to the landlords, and it's not fair to the good tenants who are also paying their rent, even through COVID and even through their limitations of their finances. We have to make sure that we have to come to that agreement. Now, if we have a landlord who, and because of COVID, the Landlord and Tenant Board, the adjudicators are mandated that they can refuse or delay an eviction at their discretion. So if if a tenant says, I'm going to be homeless, I can't afford this, the adjudicator can say, we're going to delay this. We're not saying that you're not owing the money. You're still going to have to owe the money. We're still going to give you a judgment to say that you owe the money, but we're going to delay this eviction, or we're going to refuse this eviction because of the circumstances. The only way to almost get out of that is that a landlord has to state how it's causing them financial hardship. And that word is undue financial hardship. If you have to include that within your hearing to say, I can't manage my properties, I have bills, I have obligations to pay, and because of this, and you usually get that sympathy from the adjudicators when you have that single family home or a semi, So making sure that you're utilizing that type of concept when addressing your non-payment of rent application. Or if we're dealing with an N5 application with our tenants who are ruining the enjoyment of others, causing damages, you can say, listen, one, it's causing severe damages to my rental unit, or you can say the other tenants are going to bring me to court and underneath a T5 application or a T2 application because of the fact that I'm not dealing with this type of tenant. So that's when the adjudicator will then may not do the refusal or the delay on the eviction process. So a lot of it's got to come down to not trying to look like the hard ass and be like, I want my money. You got to really show that you've been trying to work with them, and you got to show that you can only work with them so far based on your own personal finances.
And do you have any recommendations? Like, because obviously documenting everything is super important, making sure if you are actually like trying to work with them, probably putting it in emails and stuff. But do you have any recommendations yourself on like the best ways to just make sure you can show that you're working with your tenants?
Everything has got to be email or text messages. I know a lot of our tenants are going with text messages. So taking those screenshots, and you have to include this, put it into your computer, put it into their file. You want to put a paper record, every issue that's being drummed up. Luckily for us now with the changes that are happening, normally landlords were cut off guard when you have a non-payment rent happening and the tenants go, well, he didn't fix this and he didn't fix that and he didn't fix this. And it's like, okay, hold on, let's see what's going on here. Let's adjourn this. I was like, no, we're not adjourning this. They don't have a maintenance issue. They're only saying that because they don't want to get evicted. Well, now tenants have 7 days prior to their hearing to inform the Landlord and Tenant Board of any type of maintenance issues to be brought up the Landlord and Tenant Board. Now, they say that tenants cannot bring up any maintenance issues at the L1 application hearing if they haven't already sent it in prior to the Landlord and Tenant Board. It's been still happening. They're still like, well, they weren't able to do it. You know, instead of adjourning this meeting, hey, landlord, can you agree to allow this person to present some type of evidence? So be cautious on that part of it. I would like to be like, no, they had 7 days, and this meeting of what's happening took 8 months. They had a lot of time to not only get the maintenance to you, but they had a lot of time to seek legal advice as well. So it's the same thing with a landlord. Now, if you look at the concept that landlords are coming prepared either with a paralegal, and what an adjudicator thinks is that, you know, oh, maybe they have money. You know, our landlords are finding if they represent themselves, the adjudicator seems to be more willing to work with them versus them being represented by a paralegal. But always making sure that everything is in writing. You have to put this as a case. Like if any of your tenants good, even if they're good paying tenants, if you ever have a problem with them, you want to make sure that everything that you've ever thought of or seen or dealt with them, it's all in paper form, because it's going to be like court, like you're going on trial for manslaughter or something.
So let's see, does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask?
No, more of a statement. So it sounds like to me that ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Making sure that you don't get the bad tenants, and I would also say making sure that you communicate with your tenants too before it comes to this. So, like case in point, Diana, you took over a tenant in Tillsonburg, and they were having problems with the previous landlord, but they've been a really good tenant for you because you addressed their issues, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And sometimes it's really funny. You don't realize that sometimes the stems of bad tenants is really just bad communication between the tenant and the landlord. You gain a grudge, and then some people can't recover from it, don't like notice it, and then think it's like, oh, it's a bad tenant or something. And it's really maybe the landlord's fault, right? They're just not communicating properly or something.
Just like every business, you need to have rules and procedures. And that's something that every landlord should have. When this happens, this is what we do. When this happens, this is what we do. So you're not really quite looking at the situation. Because I had a tenant that she was upstairs. First year they were in the bachelor unit in the basement, and they used to put their garbage in the front of the house by the front window. Well, the tenant in the 2-bedroom always did that too. Well, once the downstairs and the bachelor moved upstairs, all of a sudden they had a problem with the garbage being right by their window. So we wrote a letter and said, listen, we have to be fair for everybody. Ideally, we want the garbage to be at the back of the fence, but through winter, it's not going to be practical. So we can have 2 options. One, it's going to go by the window with everyone having lids on. Everyone's going to respect the space. Or we can take over the garage, which is a commonly used area for all tenants, and it's an emergency exit for the bachelor unit, and or we can put the garbage there. And because the tenant who was complaining about the garbage, she actually took over the garage as her own little hangout spot, and now we haven't heard a single thing, and everybody's fine. And it's like, see, I just told you I was trying to be fair here. So it's really, you got to really get to know it, and just know that you're just trying to keep everybody happy. And that's the goal is when you deal with multi-residents, is trying to make them happy and letting them know this is the limitation of what they can expect. Because sometimes you do have tenants that will push your buttons.
Yeah. And like that, once they actually know the reasoning behind things, usually they're pretty like, oh, okay, you're right. You know what, let's do this or that. It's usually when they don't know that I feel like they're going to make assumptions and they're just going to keep on pushing what they want. And then, you know, like that, then grudges come up or whatever. So Desiree, did you have a question that you wanted to ask?
Yeah. How many animals are allowed in a unit when you're renting for a tenant?
What city?
Aurelia. How do you?
I don't know exactly for Aurelia. I know from a few other cities, just because it came up throughout my time frame. Just recently in Cambridge, we found out that maximum is 4 dogs.
Huh?
Maximum is 3 dogs, so 4 is actually over the limit. And then when that happens, you get bylaw in, and bylaw actually will fine the tenants until they remove the 4th dog from the property.
Okay, what's about cat?
Cat, I believe there's 5, but then there's a little stipulate. Well, 5 here in town, but there's a stipulation with kittens. So there's got kittens in there. Then there's a time frame before those kittens are above the age before they consider that to be an actual cat. I'm like, okay.
And what's about exotic animals? I mean, I haven't had these experience. I mean, but my tenant that's living upstairs, when they moved in, as I said, I got them through a property management company. So when they moved in with 3 cats, and then all of a sudden I found out number 4 is in, and I'm like, okay. So I went to the property management, and they did tell me it's 4, but I still ask, and I just find it was a little too much, knowing that, well, I'm the tenant living downstairs of my house.
Well, look at the situation. What if 3 cats, 4 cats, 20 cats? What would be your problem for it? Is it them not taking care of the animal? Or
no, they take care of it and everything. It's just that the animals tends to move around sometimes, and I'm in the basement, and it could be a little bit noisy.
You hear the pouncing type of
yeah.
For me, with animals, it's like one. For the cats, it's more the spray. You know, that male cat spray that can really damage a unit. It also could make it very impossible for you to want to be in that house where there's or even an apartment building. You can even smell it in an apartment building. And then you have the concept as, are you allergic to it, right? So that's where you kind of know how to handle that situation. If that is the case of why you don't want it, but if it's the noise part of it,
nothing much you can do.
No, you're definitely.
Well, so far, I mean, I've been really, I had conversation with them, and through the property management, they're so good. But at the end of the day, I mean, I need this information for future, because you have tenants may stay long, and you have the ones that mightn't stay long.
Yeah.
Right. So I need to know, what do I do? How do I handle it? And all that stuff. So in the moving towards the future, I will know what to do.
Yeah. That's the part of your training. It's, you know, do you have any pets? And they're like,
right.
Like, oh, I got my muffin at home. He's waiting for me. He's like a Doberman. He's so cute. I don't know why people don't like him. And they're like, oh my God, I got this big like Bronco, this Rottweiler too. And I'm like, really? We should have a dog date. And I don't have a dog. but now I know they got a dog. So now we know that I don't want them because they got a dog.
Right.
You know, and you honestly, it's sad to say that you have to be an actor or an actress when you're dealing with these tenants, because this is everything that you ever worked for on the line, and your government has failed you as to bring that fairness to both good landlords and good tenants, right? So you're not being mean. You know that there's responsible dog owners and cat owners and stuff like that, but because there's such a high volume of people who are neglecting their animals, that can cause thousands and thousands of dollars of damage to that rental unit, or cause an interference with others. You got to be careful, and you got to do whatever you need to do to protect your investment.
Okay. Another question I want to ask you, is it okay at least every 6 months to just go do a walk around to make sure your tenants are taking care of your property? I mean, because this is your life. You work hard for it, especially if you work a minimal amount of money and you struggle to save these down payments, because these down payments are steep to come by. And when you put in all your effort into this and somebody's trying to destroy, trust me, I don't want to say the word, but trust me, read my mind, you want to squeeze the blood out of that person. So
You want to hug them. You want to hug them.
Yeah, give them a nice squeezy hug. So, I mean,
you have to do that. It should be a part of every landlord's rules and procedures. Every 6 months, either fall back, spring ahead, go in there, do your inspection, make it a part like it's their birthday, just like your N1 application. Well, you can't get your increase this year, but you have to make that repetitive and make it look like they know it's happening, because this is their birthday.
Okay, good.
You go in there, you're going to check your furnace, you're going to check the smoke detectors, you're going to get the carbon monoxide detectors checked. You have a worksheet, have it. I came in on this time, on this date, and I checked the smoke detectors. They're working. The expiry date is this, and the tenants sign off that it's working, it's in good order, and they're not going to tamper with it, because if that place had a fire, the fire inspectors are asking for, when was the smoke detectors last checked?
Exactly.
So this is a part where you say, I'm doing this to cover my ass, and I'm doing it to protect yours. So this is why I'm coming in. I don't want to invade your privacy. I really don't want to. It's none of my business, right? But I do want to make sure that you're safe, and that I'm doing my part to make sure that I'm not held accountable for if you die in here because you did something. So, and you check everything. You're just checking the rooms. You're making sure that there's nothing barricading the furnace room as well. There's nothing stacked inside that furnace room if they have access to it. And you're just showing that you're just doing your normal checks, and they expect it every year on the same time.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Your insurance actually expects you to do these checks. Your insurance actually expects you to do these checks. It's very important, because like exactly what you said, if you're not, checking, for example, your fire alarms on regularly, then, like if the fire alarm doesn't go off because of a fire, then insurance may not cover that. I'm not sure. But I mean, I don't know to the level that, let's say, they may cover it because of you're not doing what you need to do as a landlord, or it may just increase your income. I'm not sure to that, but I know that the insurance companies also expect like you need to do your certain checks.
Oh, it's all about
because I have done it, and I could see tenants was not too happy about it, and I'm like, in my mind, it's my property, and if anything goes wrong, it's my responsibility. And at the same time, I don't want you to come and crash my property and then you leave and go like nothing happens.
No, go in with your check. Go in with your chart. Have your chart of checking list to show this is what you're doing. This is for your paperwork, so that they don't think that you're just poking around like this. Go in with your paperwork. Make sure you're checking all the bathroom sinks. You're checking the kitchen sink. You're making sure that there's no leaks there, especially when you pay for the utilities. You want to make sure that there's no small little drips underneath or above.
Exactly. Right.
And you're also checking the toilets out as well.
Absolutely. Sounds good. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I think Terry had a question. I don't know if he wants to come on to ask, or maybe I'll ask for him.
Yeah, I'm on here.
Awesome.
Everyone. So when we were speaking regarding keeping records of tenant interactions, screenshots of conversations or emails or whatnot, I'm wondering if there's a little bit of a simpler way, such as some sort of program that somebody could recommend for tenant management. So that would automatically store emails or texts, or just consolidate everything, have all your forms and all that kind of stuff. Because I understand we can just make a folder in our laptop or wherever we store our stuff. But just let's say, for example, like I'm really considering jumping into multifamily alongside my flips. And, I don't think it's going to be that simple to manage 5+ tenants and growing. So if there's something that, like, I do know that one of the cash flow tribe guys, I think Matt McKeever's team built a management software, but I haven't used it and I don't know anybody who has. So I'm wondering if anyone has any recommendations.
I know that we have two that I'm still interviewing. One I think has a lot of potential. It's still in that beta testing type of way, and I don't like kind of telling anyone about it until it's fully done and you got all the gigs out, because the worst thing is trying to tell someone it's awesome and then it has a boop in it and you're like, oh crap. But if I can get back to you on that, Terry, I'll let Diana know, just because there's two. One guy in Windsor and the other guy is in Kingston, and the other guy used to be the president of one of the landlords associations out there, and that had a program where it gave you that reminder as well when it came down to your N1 application. It helped you, that form was already ready to go. You didn't have to do the calculations. It already was programmed into doing that. So it had a lot of potential, and it also had that conversation thing where you can upload into this document. But it's all going to be about that uploading and keeping it all in one folder. And you can even have pictures of the rental units and maintenance request. And it's also a way for your tenants to communicate with you through this program as well. So they have an access to a portal. So if there was ever a maintenance request, they can do it through that portal. You can respond back, and it keeps that conversation recorded. So if you ever do need it for the Landlord and Tenant Board, it's right there. So that's the part of the program that I'm really interested in. I just have to figure out, are you done with your overall program of it, and is it ready to go? And are we not going to be upset if there's a glitch? Because sometimes these program companies, when they scale and they get a lot of users, what happens is it's got to expand slowly. They got to put work into it to make sure that happens. If not, it will have that glitch that people talk about. It all depends how fast that program is going to grow. But right now, I would like you put it into a folder, but I see where you're coming from. You're going to grow quickly, and you want to make sure that it's easy to have a program now and utilize, and it, so that you're not trying to upload all of your tenants into a new program when you're going to be so busy trying to do your flips and your scales.
Exactly. And I feel like just relearning different softwares, jumping from software to software, or just reteaching anybody to do it is a waste of time and effort that can be avoided. That's why I'm trying to get ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
But,
and
okay.
That's the one thing that we've, what I liked about Landlord Credit Bureau and telling all the landlords about Landlord Credit Bureau now. I spent 10 years telling everybody about who Ontario Landlords Watch is so that we can pull our efforts and keep advocating. Now I'm going to spend the next 10 years telling everybody about Landlord Credit Bureau, because that is something that every landlord needs to have, just like a property management software, and just like we're getting insurance for our property. So why pay for a landlord association when we can pay to be a part of a premium membership for Landlord Credit Bureau, where you're going to be able to benefit your tenants who are paying on time, and then it keeps the good paying tenants paying on time because they have an incentive to do so. And this is a way for the bad tenants, or professional tenants, Desiree? Professional tenants to stop abusing the landlords, and that we're able to stop them in their track from playing the game. And that part is showing that payment history. And that's the one thing that a lot of people, we had Rent Check, we had Neighborly, you're able to report those monthly payment history, but it was never going to the creditors. It wasn't going to Equifax. It wasn't going to TransUnion. So Landlord Credit Bureau actually reports that in the middle of the month for the previous month to Equifax. As long as you're putting that landlord's name, the tenant's name in there and their birthday correctly, that will be reported into Equifax. So as landlords are doing their checks, and every landlord should be doing their checks, if you do have a tenant that was reported to Equifax, you're going to have a trade line on that report now, so that every landlord's going to see there's a trade line for Landlord Credit Bureau. we got something to look at here. Because sometimes we have tenants who are, you know, bad with their credit card payments, bad with their Rogers bill, or even with their credit cards, but they still pay their rent on time. And we could be losing out on someone that is good tenants and keeping the place clean just because of their past mistakes of what's showing up on their credit report. But if you got to see how they pay their rent and how they pay their utilities, because you can report your tenants' past utility bills as well. And if you do have a judgment for damages, you can report that, but you don't need that consent when you're reporting bad debt for the rent or the utilities to Landlord Credit Bureau. And that's the perfect ethics where we could be saving a lot of time going to the Landlord and Tenant Board in order to have this dealt with and mediate it through Landlord Credit Bureau. We had a tenant that we put in, this is how I started knowing about Landlord Credit Bureau, found out about it, signed up, put my tenant in who left me 7 months. I've been doing it for 18 years. I had one tenant that decided to take me for a long ride of 7 months of the eviction. Soon as we put him in, he called me within 24 hours. And I'm like, no way, like this actually worked. Are you kidding me? So then we had another landlord who said that he had a realtor as a tenant, and she ended up saying, I am not paying 4 months. And he's like, listen, I'm going to report you. She laughed, he laughed, and then boom, she's paying him everything in full because she ended up wanting to go, I believe it was a car rental that she wanted to go get, and she couldn't get it. So she paid everything off. We had another lady who I remember waking up to it, and she's like, it worked. I'm like, what worked? She's like, well, this tenant was inside of the unit. He was pretty much out. He's just holding on to her unit as hostage, because that's what they do sometimes. They're completely out because they know the eviction's happening. She said, listen, if you don't give me my keys to my property manager on Monday, I'm going to report you. That night, he messaged her and said, hey, did you report or register us yet? And she sent him a screenshot that she was doing it right now, but it didn't show anyone's name. He's like, okay, I'll have the keys over there on Monday. Monday morning, the keys were there. He relinquished all of his rights to that unit, and she never had to even go through that process of trying to get the sheriff to evict this tenant, because she got to bargain with that tenant because I'm reporting you to Landlord Credit Bureau, or I could take you out if you give me my keys, or I can take you out if you pay me the balance in full. You know, this is the power that's behind this service, and this is what everyone needs to be using it. We need to be reporting in one spot, and we need to be able to pull from it. They're going to have their credit checks available as well. But right now you can do a tenancy search. Premium members get it for $6.99. And if you only get charged if you get a hit. So that's where, you know, hey, what's the chance? We'll put it in there. Great, we can find something. But we have tenants right now who have an eviction list. I'll share it with you so you can share it with your people. But it's, here's the address and here's the list of the landlord. They'll either tell you it's an eviction happening or it's a hearing. And I'm like, you can make a list of landlords, but we can't make a list of you to be public. Like, we got to pay for it. Like, are you kidding me? But this is where we need to bring that equalness and the fairness that's happening with the landlords, because it's going to get worse unless we're being very vocal of what we're doing and saying, hey, we're tightening up our screening. We're not signing up with any government program that is encouraging landlords to be a part of that, giving back to the community, helping you guys out, giving the city the option to sign the lease for the tenant. We're not going to do that. And we're going to report to Landlord Credit Bureau until you change the Residential Tenancies Act and Landlord and Tenant Board. They're going to feel the burn, because all the people that we're evicting and all the people that we're denying, they're going to be going to the Steve Clark themselves. They're going to go to these social agent or these service managers, the social agencies, and then they're going to go to their MPPs and say, I need to be put on the waiting list for government housing. And they're going to say, what area are you from? In my area alone, it's 10 plus years. And if it's in Mississauga, it's 22 plus years. The government cannot continue to keep building, to managing, maintaining, and subsidizing government housing on taxpayers' dollars, not including what government taxpayers pay for emergency housing with the shelters or hotels and motels, and what we pay to have someone staying in hospital stays because there's no suitable accommodations.
Yeah, it's crazy, but at the same time, an amazing, like that software is amazing to have, and definitely going to help us out a bit more. So I want to get, I don't know how to say her name. Yeah, Salma. Is it Sal?
Hi.
Sal?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi. Hi. I just had a question. This is kind of my first time actually going through like the whole process, the legal process with the Landlord Tenant Bureau. I was just wondering if I've actually given multiple N4s since my tenants started living at our property because they just haven't paid rent on time. And then they've paid, but like beyond the due date of that's listed on the N4, the termination date. So I just wonder if I can use like an N4 that I served in October as in my L1 application. Because I realized that the one I served most recently in January wasn't correct because I didn't hand it to them right away. But the one I did in October was correct. But they have paid, I think, their October rent. It was just much later than the termination date on that N4. So I'm just wondering if I can use that for an L1 application.
So you want to use the N4 application that you served them in October?
Yeah, because I served one in October, December, and January, but the one I served in January I actually handed it to them too late because I didn't realize I have to personally put it in their mailbox. So I think that's why I don't think that would be valid.
Okay, hold on. So when was the last N4 notice that you gave them?
Well, this month, so February, like 3rd.
And that's, so right now they're only behind on February's rent.
They're behind from January's rent, and then they haven't paid February's rent either, like the full of it, the full amount.
Okay, so you gave them an N4 on the January?
I did, yeah, but the January one, so like their rent is due on the 2nd, so I gave it to them by email, but then I actually put it physically in their mailbox on the 12th of January, and the termination date on that was the 18th. So I think that form itself is wrong. So
you gave another one on the February?
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna have to have a conversation, girl, on the phone. So one right now, you don't keep giving them an N4 notice if you have one that's valid and it's ready to go. As long as you're putting the date, you can give them an N4 on the 2nd or give it to them on the 7th of it, but you have to make sure that you count that 14 days on the N4 application. Now, mind you, I'm giving you personal advice. I am not giving you legal advice, so make sure you talk to a paralegal, but you want to have that 14-day mark on the N4 notice. If you calculated that 14-day notice and you're able to check off on the certificate of service, and if you handed it to them, if you put it where the mail is actually been delivered, that is where you're going to be certifying that is allowed to be the method of service. The only thing that you can't be quite doing is giving it to someone that is saying, hey, I gave it to someone that was living there that you don't even know who it is, but you're not going to be giving it to them by email. Even though we're really trying to advocate that our N4 should be by email, you don't want to be doing that as a way of being served because it's going to be voided and it won't make it to the L1 application. So it's best to see exactly making sure that the numbers work of how much you're telling them that they owe you on that N4, because that is very crucial. You have to make sure that your N4 for February 1st is showing when you gave it, and counting that 14 days. And if so, you would be filing that N4 application. You can't go back in October to do it. You have approximately 30 days from serving that document in order to file your L1 application. So if you don't have it in that time frame, and you want to make sure it's valid and it doesn't get thrown out, and don't waste your $186 or $201 filing at the board, because they'll just say, sorry, thanks for your money, but start over again, please.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
No problem. I get too riled up over this stuff.
Pardon?
I get too riled up over this. I'm like, no. I'm just like, no, oh my God, don't do it. Call me. We'll do this one together.
I'm going to let Lo, do you want to ask your question? See if she's going to, he or she, I'm not sure if that's a girl or a guy. Okay, I'll ask the question for them. So it says, do you see common mistakes that landlords make that would be easy to fix? i.e. checking smoke detectors like you previously mentioned. Could you recommend a checklist of items that landlords should do on a regular?
Definitely got a checklist that I can share with you, just about doing the normal walkthrough, but everything is just about making sure it's the smoke detectors, it's carbon monoxide detectors, it's making sure that you're showing your due diligence, because when you have a tenant who wants to bring you to court under the lack of you doing any type of maintenance, you could be like, hey, I was just here on this day doing an inspection, you didn't say anything to us, so how are we supposed to read your mind? So don't tell me that, 7 days before our hearing date, this is what your maintenance issue is. And currently, the way that the Landlord and Tenant Board is allowing the tenants to have 7 days to give their information to the board prior to the hearing, and landlords now have 5 days before the hearing to counteract that. Once the information gets out, you only have 5 days to provide your evidence to the Landlord and Tenant Board. So we're like, tenants are getting 7, we want 7. Where's the fairness? Hello. Send. So we're really looking, like, we went through every consultation. Like, the first 2 consultations with the board were very was verbal, and they said, Kayla, we love you. When we're done talking to you, we don't have to go digging. And I'm like, oh, okay. So does that mean you're going to do some of this shit? Like, on, like, what's going on? But then now this time around, it's now a written submission, which is talking about a lot of the stuff that we've talked to through the verbal consultation. So I literally went through the 100 pages section by section and saying, okay, this is wrong. This needs to be more clarified. You're really making it confusing for landlords here. So this is why they're having to hire legal representation and pay more money for it. Let's simplify this so that landlords and tenants can feel comfortable representing themselves just like they do in Newfoundland.
That's great. I hope we answered her question, or his. I'm not sure if that's a girl or a guy, but anyone else have any other questions? Oh, yes. Okay. He said, thank you.
Awesome.
Anyone else have any questions that they would like to ask? Going once, going twice.
Wait. So I'm not quite sure that I can articulate this one. But it sounds like it's a bit of a game of cat and mouse when dealing with tenants. Now, fortunately, my tenants have been good. They pay, and we haven't had any challenges. And myself being really crappy at chasing after details, right? Like, if there's too many rules to the game, I'm just not going to play, right? So, and that being the case, is there somebody that we could talk to? Like, so if we're having challenges with a tenant, so we wind up with a tenant that is a problem, can we come to you? And I am a member of Ontario Landlords Watch, but not a particularly active member. But
it's okay, like, they're hidden.
Yeah. So if those challenges arise, like, is there a way to deal with this through a third party, I suppose?
It definitely is. One, what is that third party? Is that third party a legal rep, or is that third party a property manager, or is that someone that in the landlord community, like in one of our members in there? And they can say, like, I'm just here to be the mediator. And I've done that. I've taken on where I'm not their property manager, but I'm just there to mediate the situation, call it a consulting situation. And I go in and say, hi, I'm just here to make sure that we can come to an agreement. We can pull this resolution together so that it doesn't have to go any further and get more complicated and risk, the eviction process. What can we do here to mediate, and what do you want and what do you want, right? And obviously, you know what your landlord wants, because he's the one that kind of hired you to kind of deal with the situation. But every situation is going to be different. Like, if you had a tenant problem and you're saying, Kayla, like, this is what's happening, I want to know that full situation, and then I can kind of give you some in particular ideas of how to talk to that tenant. And I might have questions for you, like, does your tenant have any mental health issues? Did they lose their job? Are they stressed out? Is there more people living in the house? Like, you got to go based on how they're reacting through their certain living environment of what's happening to them. Because sometimes tenants usually snap off because something's going on in their life, right? And sometimes because rent is due and now they're stressed out about it, you're going to be at the front of them and they're going to be biting off your head. So it's more about trying to really get a deep understanding of what's going on in that tenant's lifestyle and understanding who they are as a person, to know how you go with. Like, I had a call from a guy who had a tenant complaining about another tenant in the property. She said there's drug dealing and prostitution happening, and this guy is only a single guy. He has his kid there. He's got his crazy baby mama that's coming home and picking up the kid, and she's yelling and screaming and crying. And so now the past landlord had given a 15-minute interval for the mama to come in and just drop off her kid, and the upstairs tenant who thinks he's prostituting and drug dealing going, is that still going to happen? And can we still enforce that 15-minute time frame? I said, first of all, that landlord should not be putting a 15-minute time frame on anybody. Like, the tenant in himself is going to be responsible for his guests. Now, if she's causing ruining the enjoyment of others there, then obviously that landlord should have been giving him the proper forms. He had to address it, right? And then I said, if other tenants are complaining about the drug dealing and the prostitution that's happening, and he's a single guy, he's just having some friends over, and now it's COVID. I don't know what's going on there, but sometimes you just have that. And again, there was some mental health with the girl that was upstairs, and she's looking at her window all the time. So it's like, you know what, let's play it where, my cameras are not catching anything. I have no other complaints. These are the rules of the game. This is what I can do. It's not going to go anywhere. But hey, if you're not happy, I don't want you to be happy with the situation. You're more than willing to, get out of your lease. No problem. If you want to go, I'll even help you out with a month's rent to move. This is what's upsetting you. And that shows that you're trying to deal with her situation. You're even trying to help her, but you don't want to listen to her shit either. So it's like, stay your nose out of other people's business. But it's going to be like that. You got to know the two certain circumstances between the tenants before we can really give you what is the game plan, what is the plan we can do to deal with a tenant and their issues that they're arising. Hope that helped. I like to give an experiment into how it goes for me to really justify. If I have a question, then you can definitely call me up. I can help you out. Okay. I'm always on the phone with the landlords, always. If I did a poll in our group right now, if you spoke to Kayla on the phone, go yes or no.
Yeah. Perfect. Thanks so much. So if I run into any tenant issues, I would be more likely to reach out to someone like yourself to figure out how to deal with it rather than a preemptive strike. I believe in just-in-time information rather than just-in-case information.
It's like that. You got to know, can we deal with the situation by communicating, or do we have to go to the board, right? Yeah. And sometimes you don't want to deal with the board. It's sometimes if you can deal with it without going to the board, without even giving paperwork for that board right now, that is the best way. Because sometimes if they don't know the Landlord and Tenant Board, soon as you give them that one form of an N4, N5, they will know the Landlord and Tenant Board, and they will know every tenant group out there that is helping them through the loopholes of how to nail your ass to the wall. So again, let's try to deal with this as a business structure, as I am the business owner, you are my customer, and my business is only going to be good as my customers, right? And that's why I tell all landlords that, we have to treat our tenants as customers. And that's why sometimes we don't want to, serve certain customers. So guess what? Out of the store, it's out of their unit. But you know where to find me. So just call me up anytime. I'm glad you're having great success though with your tenants, because there's a lot of good ones out there. There really is. We just have to stop that. It's almost like a disease, sometimes when you have bad tenants, they will spread that to others and cause good tenants to go bad.
Yeah. Well, that's actually why we chose single family homes, just one unit on purpose. Because then one tenant does not affect others. Right?
I get the concept where you don't have a lot more headaches and you're not dealing with it. And I feel that for my single families, it'd be more a risk. You know, if you do put that one person in, you're now covering everything for that property until you can get that person out. With the multis, you're able to kind of offset that cost and be able to, okay, I got money here to kind of go with this, and I'm able to handle that delay in payment.
Yeah.
But I get where that comes from. I like just having the multiple. How many units can I fit in there? I got a triplex, and I'm like, I could so put a bachelor in here. All right, let's go. Let's do it.
Can we get number 4? Hello, 5.
I know, it seems like the way I work it with kids these days, it's like I got 3 units, so I want to get a 4th unit in there. And it's like it didn't happen that way with the kids. I was happy with 3, and then all of a sudden 4 surprised happened, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to do my conference. I'm going to be 9 months pregnant. How am I going to do this? Running across the stage to the MPP and the MP, and I'm like, and then 10 days later, I went into labor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Must have been a crazy experience, waddling around with a big belly and trying to get everything done.
I know, I was looking at my pictures the other day of my advocacy, where I've been, what elected officials I've been taking pictures with, and city councilors. And then you see my pregnant one with the MP, Brian May, and I'm like, oh my God, like you can see me changing as all these people I'm talking to. And even back in 2010, you get me there with my little leather jacket on, having my paper, rallying everybody at the city hall. And I'm like, oh my God, like, I can't believe I did that. But you know what? It's the best thing I've ever done. Like, people ask me, like, why do you do this? I'm like, I started something, I want to finish it. We're not charging a membership. I do this for free. I just want to make sure that I'm bringing the community together, and that they have the option to communicate with one another and get the help that they need, because the landlord self-help is not any help. You got your elected officials that can't help. The Landlord and Tenant Board can't give you any advice on which way to do it. So the best way to do it is learn from people who have already been through it. And I'm really believe in having landlords know the system and know how to represent themselves to save that cost, as they can save that cost in order to continue to keep investing, because it still is a really good investment strategy for landlords to be in. It just sucks to see so much control that the government has of how they can put an eviction ban on, and they can change this law or change that law. But our next Facebook Live that we're going to do is definitely talk about all the different changes that the Landlord and Tenant Board is doing with, like, certificate of service, alternative services, of serving documents, because they want you to obviously track the tenant down at their house, their new place. So make sure you guys get those straps from Home Depot and strap yourself underneath the car, you know. Come on, Marco, you know you want to.
Do the Back to the Future.
Hey, way to go, Kayla. We love you. Thank you.
It's a team effort. Everyone's doing great. Like, soon as we got that Land Arc post about, hey, landlords, we want you to help us, you know, give back to the community. I'm like, hey guys, go over, give them a comment on their program. You should see the comments over there now. This is the power that I'm talking about, that we have as a group. You guys are doing fantastic with that. And that's where they're getting we actually have my regional counselor. She's like, Kayla, you know, our housing director, he wants to talk to you. He wants to know why we're not able to find housing for people who are in the shelters. I'm like, you really need to have a conversation with me on that? Here's my phone number. You need a lot more than a conversation. Book 3 hours away, buddy. 3 hours. So that's the concept where we built in 10 years. I don't have to go to them, they come to me. So this is the best part that I can do. So if I'm not in the group trying to help landlords or on the phone, I'm dealing with the elected officials, trying to figure out that strategy, and hoping that as these landlords, I can spread that word of Landlord Credit Bureau, because that is going to be our savior. That is the only thing that I can see really going to put people in their spots, change the game in how they're abusing it, is being able to report our payment history and be able to say there's a repercussion for your action now, because right now there's no repercussion. They can go to the board, you can get a judgment, you can try to garnish them, you can try to get a little bit of pennies out of them, but it's about informing them. The strike is making sure that they can't find another spot easily by now knowing that they're reporting. And it's great for the property managers, because when you're doing a property manager, one, your clients are going to love you knowing that you're reporting it. Two, when you're screening your tenants, it's always telling them, even in your ad, we will be reporting your payment history to Landlord Credit Bureau to benefit your credit. And the good ones are going to go, let's go, I want to apply for that place. The bad ones are going to like, oh shit, what is this? right? And then when you're doing the screening process and you're telling them, you know, the good ones are gonna be like, oh, I want an application. The other ones are like, I can fill it out at home. Or they fill out half of it, right? So that's the concept that I'm looking at for the power there.
Yeah, it's so great. And thank you so much, Kayla, for coming on. It was awesome having you on, and we'll definitely have to have you on again. I feel like there's always so many things that we can talk about, especially when we're talking about landlords and tenants. There's just like way too many topics. But thank you so much. Would you like to leave any information for anyone to contact you if anyone has questions?
Yeah, what I'll do, I see that there was people chatting. I never even got to see it. I'm gonna put
Oh, don't worry, I had them.
I'll put my email and my phone number in the chat, as well as the code for a 15% off with Landlord Credit Bureau, so that you can try it out. There's no contract. You can cancel at any time to try it out monthly. They just launched their annual pricing as well. There's a lot of savings to it for the annual. So if you go annual, you may not get the OLW 15, but if you want to try it out monthly, use OLW 15 for 15% off, and you guys will be loving it. And I can't wait to see everyone. I love the feedback. I can't wait. Like, I put a post in the group for everyone using it. You know, what is your feedback? Because I don't like being able to put something out there and not knowing, you know, how you guys are liking it, because I'm already getting the message, the private messages. But just test it out. You'll see for yourself.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us on. It was really awesome talking to you, and I know everyone got tons of value out of it. Thank you so much, Kayla.
No, I had great time with you guys too. So call me up and keep advocating and making sure that you're calling in your counselor, your MPP, the ombudsman, and making sure that you're telling people about Ontario Landlords Watch, because it's we need an army to win the war.
100%.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for coming on. It was nice to have everyone on, and on to the next show. Bye, guys.
Bye.